Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of Como Live, brought to you by the Legacy Amendment. My name is Ann and I have brought a prickly guest for you all to meet today. Today we are talking all about hedgehogs and their adaptations to survive. So I have brought with me the hedgehog named Murtaugh, male hedgehog we have here, one of our education hedgehogs. And he's a little sleepy, and that's pretty typical because hedgehogs are nocturnal, which means that they sleep during the day and are awake at night. So what I'm actually going to do for him today to reward him for having to come out during his nighttime is I'm going to go ahead and set him up in a swimming pool full of tunnels and balls, and I have brought him some special snacks today. I'm going to give him some mealworms that he can root around and look for. So I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle those in there, and then I will take him out and get him going, and you guys we can take a look and see what kind of activities he's going to get up to when he's not trying to go back to sleep here. And I am going to wear gloves because Murtaugh is a little bit pokey. Some hedgehogs are very pokey, and some hedgehogs are not very pokey. And sometimes with regular handling, they'll be less pokey. And sometimes it's just their personality. And so he's like moderately pokey. You can see he's a little bit curious. He's like not completely balled up. He's like, hey, what's going on? But when I tried him with my bare hands, I got poked a little bit. So gloves for me. I'm going to go ahead and put him in here. And we'll see if he gets excited about all the interesting things. Oh, already found a mealworm. So Murtaugh is an African four-toed hedgehog, native to Africa like the name, 4 toes on the hind feet. That's where they get their name. They live in savannas and grasslands and actually croplands in Africa. So if you picture the continent of Africa, they live kind of like right in the middle of it from like Somalia to Gambia on either end. So they like those grasslands. They don't like dense forest or swamps or rainforest or anything like that. So grasslands is where you're going to find them. So as before, an adaptation is a physical or behavioral trait that helps an animal survive in the wild. And Murtaugh has a couple interesting, both physical and behavioral adaptations. I forgot to mention in the beginning, if at any point you have a question about Murtaugh or hedgehogs, feel free to go ahead and type that into the chat box. And I'll do my best to get to those today during my talk or afterwards. Here's one right there. He's like, oh my gosh, what just happened? So physical adaptations, we'll start there. So the most obvious physical adaptation that everyone notices right away with hedgehogs is their spines. You can call them spines or quills, though technically there is a difference. Spines are solid and quills are spongy or hollow. Hedgehogs technically do not have true quills. They have spines, but they're kind of used interchangeably. So you can see his spines. Spines are just modified hairs, so hairs that have grown really thick and spiky. And he uses those spines for defense. They have a really great muscle that kind of goes all the way from their head down to their tail. And when they get scared, they can not only raise their spines up, just like our hair kind of can raise up a little bit when we get cold, or dogs can raise their hackles. They can control their quills that way too. They can raise their quills up or spines up. And if they're really scared, they can curl into a ball. They have a muscle that's super strong, and it's almost like purse strings or drawstring. It closes his head and his belly and his feet inside the ball, and the outside of the ball is just these spines. And so it helps keep him safe from predators. If they still, of course, their first defense would be to run and hide, because ideally they don't want to get bitten or attempt to get eaten. But if that fails, then they can curl up into that ball. He's like, I don't know, man. They are born with spines. However, when they're babies, they have this kind of soft sac around them. So the spines are soft in them, and then over the next few hours, the spines start to harden, and then they kind of poke through that sac, and then the sac kind of dries and falls away. And so that way, they're not poking their mom during birth, but they are born with those spines. Unlike porcupine quills, their spines are attached to their body. And so whereas a porcupine's quill is barbed. So if you get hit by a porcupine quill, it will stick into your skin, and then if you try to pull away, the quill will release from the porcupine's body. These guys' spines are attached to their skin, and so you could theoretically pick him up by his spines because they are attached to his skin. Though just like any other mammal's hair, the hair is replaced, or their spines are replaced throughout their life as well. Another physical trait with hedgehogs, oh, he loves that, he like really pounces on those, are his eyes, ears, nose, and whiskers. And so because they are nocturnal, they do have rather kind of largish eyes for their face, and that helps bring in as much light as they can. But they really rely on that sense of smell, their sense of hearing, and their long whiskers. So you can see, like, I can see that there's mealworms everywhere, but he's not really relying on his sense of sight. You can see he gets a little twitchy when I get too close, and that's when he sees me. But mostly you can see right now he's smelling it, got it. He smells. That's his biggest sense that he relies on. Looking for snacks is that sense of smell. And because they're nocturnal, they have long whiskers, and that helps them feel in the dark if they're getting too close to rocks or what else is around them. They are technically considered insectivores, though they're basically omnivores. And so what that means is the primary things that they eat are insects and worms and grubs and spiders and scorpions, but they all will also eat roots and little vegetative matter, and even sometimes like a small lizard or maybe even an egg if they were lucky enough. So they are opportunistic. I see we have our first question.
Yeah, Sarah's kiddos would like to know, how well can he see?
He can see pretty well, especially in during the day. I mean, he can definitely see me right here, but he doesn't rely on his sense of sight so much for his normal amount of survival. So he can see pretty well, probably about as good or maybe a little bit less than we can, but he's not like functionally blind or anything like that. He just doesn't rely on his eyesight as a primary sense. You can move around, bud. He's like, no, I know if I just stay right here, worms will come to me, and he's not wrong. I keep giving them to him. He always like freezes for a second, and then he's like, okay, wait, I smell it. Because he's an insectivore, he has really sharp, kind of spiky little teeth. And that's another physical adaptation, because those sharp teeth allow him to crunch through the exoskeleton of beetles and bugs and spiders. And so those teeth are a physical adaptation that help him eat the foods that he needs to eat. Let's talk a little bit about his behavioral adaptations. So rolling into a ball is, of course, a physical adaptation because he's got those specialized muscles that allow him to do so. But rolling into a ball is also a behavioral adaptation because the act of physically rolling into a ball is a physical adaptation, but the desire to roll into a ball to stay safe, that's a behavioral adaptation. So sometimes you have adaptations that are both physical and behavioral, and the ability and the desire to roll into a ball is an example of that. Some other interesting things they'll do sometimes when they roll into the ball, as I mentioned, is he's got a worm like right underneath him, and he's like, I smell it, but I don't know where it is if they get really scared and when they're in a ball, they will make like hissing and spitting sounds, and they can actually kind of do a little jab. They'll like ball up and they'll go, oh, oh, like that. And so sometimes that's how they'll get you, and it startles me every time. Like you'll go to pick them up and they'll be in a ball, and then they go, psst, and they poke you in the hands. And that's just a deterrent for predators to be like, hey, just in case you didn't get the memo, I'm spiky and it will hurt. And so that's a behavioral adaptation. The spitting and the poking will help keep them safe. I see we have another question. Go ahead.
Valerie would like to know, how big can they get, and do they hibernate?
Those are both great questions. So this is full-sized for an African four-toed hedgehog. Females tend to get a little bigger, but in general, this is about as big as you normally see. There are European hedgehogs as well, and they're quite a bit larger, but those are not ones you would see as pets. They are a protected species, and they mostly are illegal to own as a pet. And so when you have a pet hedgehog, it's almost always going to be this African four-toed hedgehog, also known as the African pygmy hedgehog. And then, do they hibernate? That's a really great question, and that's actually one of the behavioral adaptations I was going to mention, so thanks for the segue on that. So hibernation, of course, is an animal going to sleep when it's too cold and resources are slim. Move that out of your way here, pal. Look at, there's a worm right there. So they do both hibernate and they do something called estivate. So hibernate is when it's cold and estivating is when it's hot. And so hedgehogs will do both. If it gets too cold, they can go into a torpor and hibernate until it warms up again. If it gets too hot, they can estivate, which is the same thing. It's just like the same thing we like to do in the summer when it's just so hot and you just want to sit around and do nothing. That's like kind of desire to estivate. Hedgehogs, though, in general, their desire to estivate is actually less linked to the heat and more linked to the lack of resources. And so if they're having troubles finding food and water because it's so hot, they can estivate for 4 to 6 weeks, and then hopefully when they wake back up, things will have taken a change for the better. I see we have another question.
Kiana would like to know, why is their lifespan so short? Their brother got one for Christmas.
Yes, they do. They don't have a very long lifespan. In the wild, typically not more than 3 years. In human care, the kind of accepted lifespan for them is 4 to 6 years, though they have been known to live up to 10 years. But in general, they're just a short-lived little mammal. They typically start breeding. They can breed as young as 2 months, though in the wild, they generally don't breed that first year of life. But they do have large litters, anywhere from 4 to 10 pups. And so kind of sometimes when you have those animals that have large litters that are ready to breed right away, it's because they have that short lifespan. And they have a short lifespan because they're little and munchable. Despite the spines, they are readily eaten by eagle owls, jackals, hyenas, any sort of those small predators in Africa, of which are abundant. They like to be snacks for those. And now we're getting around. He's like, oh, there's more snacks if I walk around. I see we have another question.
So I'm going to combine Trisha and Yori's questions. It's about this specific hedgehog.
Sure.
Was this hedgehog born at Como? And what age is this hedgehog?
Murtaugh was born at Como. We actually have a hedgehog breeding program. So we have education hedgehogs, and we breed them here. And then we not only keep some of them for education purposes at Como, but we send them to zoos all around the country who need education hedgehogs. So Murtaugh was born here. I don't exactly know his date of birth because it wasn't listed on his house, unfortunately. I think he's got to be almost 2 if he's not 2 already. I remember him being born, so he's still a young lad, but he was born here, and I think he's about 2. Great questions. I see we have another question.
Yeah, Angela's 5-year-old daughter would like to know, how are hedgehogs born with all those spines?
Yes, they are born actually in a soft sac, and so when they're born, they have their eyes closed, their ears closed. They don't have any visible hairs. They look kind of like almost like a little piglet in a soft sac, and the spines are underneath that sac. And then over the next few hours, those spines harden and they poke through that sac, and then that sac kind of dries up and goes away. And so they're born in a soft sac to protect that mom. Great question. I see we have another one.
Yeah, Liz is kind of on that same turn. How many are in a litter?
Anywhere from 4 to 10 is typical. So they can have quite large litters.
All right. Now, Rob would like to know, if he's nocturnal, how did you train him to be active during our day?
I didn't train him at all. He is being encouraged to be active because I've introduced him to a novel area, a new area, and I've bribed him with snacks. If we didn't have snacks down here for him to be snooping around, if he was just in that little tank that I brought him up in, he would absolutely just be asleep, or he would bury himself and then go to sleep. So they will definitely wake up if you handle them and bring them places, but if given their choice, they would sleep the day away and then they wake up at night. So we have another question. Lots of great questions. Thanks, everyone.
So another Liz would like to know, are they social animals, or do they need a companion if you have them as a pet?
Great question. They are not social, so they are independent. They do not live together. They do not want another hedgehog friend, basically. They typically in the wild, as well as in under human care, only come together for breeding purposes. And so they live a solo lifestyle, and they are very happy to do so. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, another Liz. What does he eat?
What does he eat? He eats mostly insects and bugs, spiders, scorpions, as well as worms, slugs, snails. But he would also eat small vertebrates like a small lizard. He might eat an egg if he got the opportunity. They also have been known to eat roots and vegetative matter. But if he is given the choice, insects and worms So he's eating mealworms right now, which are one of their favorite snacks. Will you take it? He's like, no, don't get that. That's too close to me. How dare you? How dare you offer me a snack? One other really kind of interesting adaptation, well, we think it's an adaptation. He has a mystery adaptation, all hedgehogs do. And it's this behavior called self-anointing. And so it's a behavior that hedgehogs do that no one really knows why they do it. And there's some speculation, but I'd like to tell you about it. Maybe you can think about why they might or might not do something like that. But self-anointing is something hedgehogs do when they come across a smell that's really stinky or really interesting. They will actually lick it a bunch and build up a big froth in their mouth, really foamy, and then they will take that foam and they will spread it all over their quills. And no one really understands why they do that. They might also do it with toxins from a toad. So if they come across a poisonous toad, they might get some of that poison in their mouth and then get it all frothy and then put it on their quills as well. And hedgehogs actually have a really great tolerance to toxins like venoms, scorpion venoms, toad poison. They even have a little bit of an ability to resist some snake venoms as well. Oh, he went in the tunnel. He's like, well, this is a great tunnel. And so no one really understands why they do this self-anointing behavior. There's some speculation that they might be masking their smell. So if they find a smell that's really stinky, if they cover their own quills with that smell, it helps them smell like that stinky smell and not like a hedgehog, and that might keep them safe. There's also some speculation that by spreading toxins on their quills, it actually makes them more potent. And so something, not only are they spiky, if they have poison-tipped spikes, it's even more effective protection for them from predators. And so it's a mystery adaptation. We assume they do it for some reason, and we assume it is so they stay safe or help them survive, but we just don't 100% know why. So it's kind of a little mystery.
I know you've mentioned about their sense of smell and their sight. How well can they hear?
They hear very well. So besides they use their sense of smell to look for prey. Their other main sense that they use is their sense of hearing to listen for predators. So those are kind of their 1-2 punch, is their sense of smell and their sense of hearing. And then following that, they use their whiskers and then their eyesight. Oh, he said he found the jackpot of worms right there. He says, oh, if I move stuff, there might be worms under them. He didn't know that. Sorry, dude. Great questions. Any other questions about Murtaugh or four-toed hedgehogs? He's like, I'm hiding now. Let's see, you want one more big worm here, Bea?
Another question.
Go for it.
Liz, what are some illnesses that hedgehogs can get?
What are some illnesses? So they are susceptible to cancer. So they definitely can get some certain types of cancer, sarcomas especially. But one of the kind of illnesses that are specific to hedgehogs is wobbly hedgehog syndrome. And that is a neurological issue of hedgehogs that can start, typically starts usually by the time a hedgehog is 2 if they're going to develop it, though it can develop at any time. And you notice it first by when the hedgehog is standing still and they have a little bit of a wobble. And it unfortunately can't really be affirmatively diagnosed until after the hedgehog has died because it does require a dissection of the brain to confirm. But so typically it's diagnosed by a veterinarian just symptomatically. They then kind of get a paralysis that starts from their hind end and it heads all the way up to their head. And ultimately the hedgehog would die, but usually most pet owners, if their hedgehog is suffering from wobbly hedgehog syndrome, once they can no longer eat or stand or get around, they usually opt to humanely euthanize their pets so they avoid suffering. So wobbly hedgehog syndrome is kind of one of the bigger concerns you have with hedgehogs. There is some suspicion that it might be genetic in factor, and so obviously if someone was breeding hedgehogs, they wouldn't want to breed a hedgehog that had wobbly hedgehog syndrome in their line. Go ahead.
I know you mentioned this at the beginning, but can you pet them or do they like to be touched, held?
That really can depend on the individual hedgehog. So we have some education hedgehogs here that I absolutely can pick up with my bare hand. They don't curl up in my hands. They run around. They're really happy. Murtaugh is like, I would say, middling confidence, and so The fact that he's out and about right now, wandering, is great. Some of our hedgehogs are like in the ball the entire time, don't want to come out. I think if I were to pet him, because he's awake and active, he's like, oh, don't touch me. So you can see that little spitting. He's like, how dare you touch me? But he didn't curl in a ball. He's just like warning me, like, don't do that. And it really can depend on the personality as well as the amount of handling. Handling your hedgehog every day can help them be more confident and less likely to ball up or spit or poke like that. But also can be personality. You have some hedgehogs, they're born and they're social butterflies and they're great their entire lives. And you have some hedgehogs who are handled religiously every day and they never get less afraid and are always balled up or spitty, hissy. He's like, you ruined my fun. I was having fun and then you touched me and now I don't want to do anything anymore.
Just like people.
Yeah, right? Are you a little bit of it?
Tyler has asked this a couple times. I know you mentioned at the beginning, but
Yeah.
how long do they usually live?
In the wild, typically 3 years. As a pet or under human care, the average is 4 to 6, though they have been known to live to be up to 10. That's pretty rare, though. 4 to 6 is the kind of assumed age maximum there. I've ruined his fun. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining me and Murtaugh to talk all about four-toed hedgehogs. I hope you had fun and learned some new things. It looks like Murtaugh definitely had some fun gobbling up his snacks. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thanks.